And it's the order of the processes that gets you from point A to point B. And as an artist, you can visualize what steps you need to do when and how that happens to get that final result. And to me, that's exactly being a dean, right? You know where you are today, and you know in 5 years, this is your aspiration.
Welcome to another episode of Innovation Insights, where we dive deep into the minds shaping the future of industries through innovation, creativity, and groundbreaking research. We believe that innovation happens in all aspects of life. I am your host, Dr. Eulanda Sanders. Today, we're honored to welcome Dean Marie Bukowski, an accomplished arts leader, educator, and internationally recognized artist. Marie currently serves as the Dean of the College of Fine Arts at Wichita State University, where she oversees 4 dynamic schools: art, design, and creative industries, digital arts, music, and performing arts, managing a $15 million budget and spearheading strategic initiatives that grow enrollment, foster interdisciplinary research, and champion student success. Her career spans decades of impactful leadership at institutions including Kent State University, Southern Illinois University Carbondale, and Louisiana Tech University. She has launched innovative academic programs, strengthened accreditation processes, expanded faculty-led research, and created initiatives such as You Belong Here, peer-to-peer mentoring to enhance student retention. Beyond academia, Marie is an internationally exhibited artist with works showcased across Europe, Asia, and the United States. And she has been honored with numerous awards for her creative excellence and leadership. Her service on national boards, accreditation commissions, and arts councils reflects her commitment to advancing the arts as a vital and accessible force in education and community life. Join us as we explore her journey, her vision for the future of arts education, and the intersections of leadership, creativity, and community engagement that define her remarkable career. Marie, welcome to the Innovation Insights podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, I'm thrilled and honored to be here. Thank you.
Our paths crossed a couple years ago when you were still at Kent State, and I had the opportunity to meet you. And it was just a delightful time getting to know you. And then since then, I've followed your career and your artwork via social media. And so I'm just so honored. And you're our first dean on the podcast.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm honored.
Tell us a little bit about your background and how did you first get into art? And then how did you move into academia?
Yeah, it was, well, so, my first introduction to the arts was through music. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we lived not too far from Carnegie Mellon University. And they have an amazing prep school for music and visual art. And my brother and I both started in music. And while my brother stayed in music, I think I was maybe in 5th or 6th grade when I shifted over to visual art. Still had music, in my blood and played clarinet for years, but really started to take art more seriously. And while I knew I wanted to major in art, I knew I wanted to be an artist, but I don't think I really knew what that meant. I knew that I just couldn't see myself doing anything else. So I majored in art at Carnegie Mellon University and started working just odd jobs just to be able to make a living so I could support my artwork on my own, and was fortunate to have some arts related positions out of undergrad, which was wonderful. And the longer I was out of undergrad, I knew that I wanted to go to graduate school, but I didn't really know when. I wanted to see what kind of artwork I would make on my own, if I would make artwork on my own, because if you're not driven as an artist without deadlines by professors, then art's probably not the career for you. And so I learned that, I was able to make artwork and be driven on my own to create work, and knew graduate school was on the horizon for me. Just didn't know when. And so finally I just had that sense that had hit that right moment and it was time for graduate school. And as I got closer to that moment of applying to graduate school, I think that's when I knew I wanted to go into academia and be a teacher, be a faculty member where I could stay immersed in the arts, where I could teach students and still make my own artwork and make a living that way. And I knew that that was the avenue I wanted to go in.
Thank you for choosing academia, and academia is wonderful. So thank you.
It is. It really is, and I really can't see myself doing anything else. So yeah, it's been great, and never saw myself ever wanting to be in administration either. I always said, "Oh, I would never do that. That's not why I went into art. That's not why I became a faculty member. I don't, administration, ugh." I and and here we are.
So what changed then? What changed and led you into administration?
I had a director of a school of art who hired me, was a wonderful person, and asked me if I wanted to be a graduate coordinator. I had been at the university for a number of years at that point, and and there was a graduate coordinator already, and he and I were working side by side for about a year or so, where I was helping do some things towards the graduate program, but he was the primary coordinator. And and then I basically got news that, "Hey, congratulations, you're the new graduate coordinator." And I thought, "Well, I don't wanna do that." And and of course he said, "Oh, well, I thought you did. I thought you were interested, which is why you were doing this work with the program." And I said, "Well, at some point, maybe, but not now." And lo and behold, we went back and forth for a period of time, and I became the graduate coordinator, very reluctantly, and found out that I actually liked the work and was kind of good at it, and just found it to be really interesting. I think because being an artist, I I always like to understand how things work. You see a thing, but then what happens behind it that makes it work? And I think that's sort of what got me interested in leadership was I could then pull the curtain back and look and see what the inner workings were to get the program, the college, the institution to that point, and just really liking all the behind the scenes things that is all the forward facing parts, right? And those connections in my mind made sense, and I felt like I could understand why universities, why schools, why programs were doing what they were doing because I understood the background behind it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I love that you mentioned what you bring in as a artist. So what I'm really interested in is that you mentioned being an artist and knowing how things go together. Because sometimes people feel that someone that has a art background or a design background is not a good administrator, that they need to have a business background or something. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I mean, and and that certainly makes sense, right? I mean, there's no reason a business person or somebody with that type of background couldn't be a leader, but and my particular background is printmaking. And I see being a dean being completely influenced by being a printmaker and them actually being the same thing. It's the same process, whether you're making art or serving as an administrator. Is with printmaking, you have an idea and you know what you might want it to look like on the other side. And then it's up to you as the artist to know, okay, well, how many plates do I need? Which one do I need to etch first? And which plate do I pull? And it's the order of the processes that gets you from point A to point B. And as an artist, you can visualize what steps you need to do when and how that happens to get that final result. And to me, that's exactly being a dean, right? You know where you are today, and in 5 years this is your aspiration. So it's just it's the same thing. It's a matter of which process, which thing is it that you do first, and what's the order of the steps you do to get from where we are today to where we want to go 5 years. So I see them being exactly the same thing, different results, but same process. To me, it makes perfect sense that creative individuals, artists can be leaders because it's a direct influence from how they make the work.
From what you just said, I'm taking away from that 2 Ps, process and problem solving too,
Mhm.
and that having those skills in that area. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know I was a process-driven person until I knew, until I started out as a painter, never imagined I would be a printmaker and fell in love with the process. And that's what drives my work both as an artist and as an educator, and became less interested in painting over the years because it didn't have that same. It's still very creative and has its own process, but in a very different way that I just didn't respond to as much anymore.
Ah, I love that, I love that. Well, you for a reluctant academic or a reluctant administrator, you have had several leadership positions before becoming dean at Wichita. So you mentioned graduate coordinator. Could you talk to us a little bit about some of your other roles that you held that led you to where you are now as a dean?
Yeah, yeah. So I also served as directors of schools of art and design as well. I served in that role at Southern Illinois University Carbondale for a period of time. From there, went to Kent State as the school director of the School of Art, and then from there was promoted to be associate dean. And of course, everywhere along the lines, when I was a graduate coordinator, I said, "Well, this is as far as I wanna go in administration because I'm still a faculty member, I'm still working with students, still mentoring graduates, and I have a little bit of the interesting administrative work to see how it all comes together." I would never wanna be a school director, and then I was for 8 years and absolutely loved it. And as a school director, I thought, "Well, this is as far as I would ever wanna go because I'm within my discipline, in a school of art and design, I'm within my discipline." After you're a school director, then you're outside of your discipline. Even if it's a college of the arts or fine arts, you're still outside of your discipline. I would never wanna do that. And then and then lo and behold, there was an opportunity to become an associate dean and loved that work. And that led to my current role, here at Wichita State as dean. So, I've always said, "Well, I would never do that. I'd never wanna do that." And, now I say, "Well, never say never," because you just don't know. You just don't know what is gonna grab you, to get you interested. What doesn't seem interesting at one point in time becomes exactly what your passion is, because from that first point to where you are now, tremendous amount of growth happens in there that you don't really think about or anticipate.
Oh, that makes sense. And I love never say never because
Yeah, you just don't know. Someone asked me recently, "Well, would you ever wanna be a provost?" And, in my head, I'm thinking, "Oh, I don't know." But, you know yeah, so I won't say never, because you just don't know what happens and what that growth is, and that growth that you go through isn't always tangible. It's not like you see those things along the way. It's just kind of it just weaves itself into the fabric of who you are, kind of unknowingly without you realizing it.
right. Well, how has the transition been into the dean position? I know that you left Kent State to move to Wichita State, and
Mhm.
um, from my experience when meeting you at Kent State, and just also seeing on social media when you post something about your artwork or think your colleagues from Kent State still revere you quite highly. So, how was that?
Well, I think I've learned that the best decisions that you can make are probably the hardest ones. Like I knew it was I knew it was the right time to leap into something new. I just knew it was the right time. And while the decision was a little bit easy to make, the hard part was all the stuff that comes with it, right? Because I was at Kent State for 6 years and loved it there, absolutely loved it there, spent most of my time in the School of Art, but with the whole college, there's an amazing group of individuals, creative people everywhere, and just such an engaging group and colleagues who have become friends. And so when it came time to leave, for as excited as I was to come here to Wichita State, it was devastating to leave, the work that I loved, the things that I had built with my colleagues and leave those friendships behind. But in actuality, I didn't really leave them behind because we're still connected. And I remember when I left Kent State, physically left, and I left my neighborhood and I hit the interstate. I basically followed the moving van out here. I burst into tears and I drove as far as I could that night, which was close to the border of Illinois. Cried the whole way because I was so sad to leave Kent State and spent the night there. And then the next day was at the end of the day, I would be in Wichita. Well, when I woke up that morning for that last leg of the drive, I was so excited because I was almost at my new home, my new job, my new place. And it was just really funny in hindsight. Just night and day. I was so sad and then so excited so quickly. But the transition was really smooth, both personally and professionally. Everything about the transition was easy, even into the job. And the best gift you can get in any new job as a leader is having a great leadership team. There was a team already there in place that was just incredible. And all of the colleagues in the College of Fine Arts are just wonderful people, and I felt embraced pretty quickly and really felt like we could work together, you know, pretty quickly and pretty easily. Not that the work is easy, but everyone is, willing to come together and knowing that, we have to make changes to stay relevant as a College of Fine Arts. And so it was just smooth as could be. Couldn't have asked for anything better.
That's wonderful. They're so lucky to have you.
Thank you.
And within the college, you have 4 schools that you oversee,
Mhm.
correct? And so what are some of the top priorities for the college?
So so we started right away to build out our strategic roadmap after I got here. So the university, has their strategic plan, and the main priorities of the university are access and affordability as the top one, fueling the talent pipeline, and increasing economic prosperity for the community here. So those are the university's primary goals and priorities. So as a college, we're working in that direction, right? Because if we're advancing, then we're going to advance the university as well. So we developed a mentoring program for students. You belong here, peer-to-peer mentoring, that we felt was really important for our new and incoming students. So that's a priority, as well as a summer program that we assist, a summer advantage program where we'll pay for a student's 3 credit hour course that's required for their degree program to help them stay on track. So it's specifically for students who fall behind early on in their careers, to help them stay on track with the hopes that they'll stay to graduate. That's also another priority of ours. And then 2 funds that we've recently developed, a student professional development fund to allow students to go to conferences, to showcase their work, to network with the right individuals, people in the industry. So it makes their time from being a student to transition to being, whatever artistry it is, into their discipline in their career, to make that smoother, to provide them those resources to do that. And then finally, we developed an arts fund, which is accessible resources for technology support. So students who might not have enough money to buy a laptop or certain software for their computers, needed for what they need to do to be successful as students. We help them with that. And so we're trying to prioritize as many facets around, students as possible to make sure that they're as successful as they can be. So those are our priorities because it hits every student in each of the 4 schools, right? So, it doesn't matter if you're a music major or an art major or dance major. All of these things are relevant to these students, and so we wanna be able to provide students the best possible experience they can have here, and without as much of a financial burden and giving them the networks they need.
Oh, I love that because majors in the arts are expensive.
They all they are.
They are.
That's why we lose a lot of students. I mean, we're an urban institution, and so our demographic here is different than it was at Kent State. Some similarities, but resources, just aren't available for some of our students. And we have so many students in our college that say, "Well, I don't have enough money. I'm going to stop out for a semester to work to earn money and come back." And you know what? They don't. They don't come back. And so what can we do to help them, with that kind of burden? And, we can't always give them as much as they need, but hopefully it can help them get through. And also with our peer-to-peer mentoring program is even students who are struggling, if they have a sense of belonging and they're making friends and they have people they're connected to, they'll be more inclined to stay as well. So that's the other piece of it, is how we knowing that students are going to struggle no matter what. We can't just magically make every resource available to them. But if we can build in a network of support for them, and through that provide them resources, not just financial resources, but other things they may need on campus, that they'll be inclined to stay, and because they don't wanna leave that network of friends.
Yeah, having that community is so important, and I love that you're building it on campus with the peer-to-peer mentoring program, but then also you're helping them start to build it by being able to travel to conferences and building that network that way.
Yeah, yeah.
So good.
Yeah, yeah, we're excited, and we're early on in our processes for this. I'm only starting year 3, so we're pedaling as fast as we can, but we're starting to see small areas where this is making a difference, but we won't really see the true impact for a little while. But the students who have benefited from some of this so far, we've gotten really good feedback. So our goal is to continue to grow these things too, so we can reach out to more students and provide resources for more and more students over time.
That's great. You've got it launched. That is fabulous.
Thanks.
From your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges and opportunities facing fine arts colleges today?
Well, I think the biggest thing we're facing, colleges like ours everywhere across the country, is the demographic cliff, you know, because of the recession in 2008. So, we're at the early stages of it now, but we're starting to see fewer and fewer students coming out of high schools. The same number of, universities are competing for those same students. There's fewer of them now.
Mm.
And what we're also seeing is that of those fewer students, more and more of them are likely to give up their passion to pursue a degree that's going to lead to whatever is considered a stable career path. And, when I was a student, I knew I wanted to be an artist even though I didn't know what that meant. I was willing to throw all caution to the wind and just see what happens. But we're at a different place, with students, with the economy, with just politically where we are and where higher ed sits in all of that. So there's a lot of things that are making younger students choose different paths. And so that's a big challenge. At the same time, that also leads us to thinking about the opportunities that it can bring, right? Because with a challenge, there's always something on the other side of it. So we might not have thought of things if we weren't facing this. And so I think challenges always are a blessing in disguise because they bring ideas that you would not have come to otherwise. So we're looking to build out some things in our college to try to capture those very students, because there are students on our campus who want to be fine arts majors but are selecting another major. So if we can offer some unique programming to either get them to take a couple classes with us, or if they choose to minor or even switch majors. So we're trying to become more innovative in our thinking, more collaborative and interdisciplinary in our approaches, and multidisciplinary. So if somebody is a major over here, can we tie that major to the arts in some way? So we're looking to launch an arts entrepreneurship minor, for example, that would not only help our own students in the college to give them that kind of business information that they need to build a foundation if they want to start their own studios, build their own dance studio or their own ceramics, studio, or whatever it is, to give them that type of business experience. But what about students who aren't business or arts majors? We could capture students that way too who may have that kind of interest, and that may tie into what they're doing in their majors as well. So we're looking at things like that can, even though there's fewer students, how can we capture more students who have that artistic, that creative mindset, that still want to be involved in art, but don't really know how if they're not majoring in it?
Oh, amazing, amazing. Yeah, I'm such good forward thinking. I do want to ask you your thoughts about AI within the arts because there's a lot of
Mhm.
discussion about how that's impacting the art world.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't know that I have a great answer for it. I think it depends on how I'm looking at it. I know as a college, we've got some faculty who are trying to do some research with it and bringing it into the classroom with their students, and a lot of faculty aren't interested and, in fact, against it. And I see both sides of it. I think there's I think there's a role and a place for it, but it's a matter of figuring out what that role is and how we introduce it. Early on, we were seeing artwork shown, on the internet that it would take aspects of other people's copyrighted work and created something different with it, but it was still a copyright infringement. That's a problem, and how we get around that, I'm not really sure. There's other ways though that it can be useful, and I have found that if I'm alone and I don't have my team around that we can throw ideas around, I brainstorm with AI. Like, I don't have it write a report for me, because those reports have to be so specific about things. So I don't have it do the legwork for me, but sometimes it can be a good partner in brainstorming where, like, I'll have an idea and I'll pose that to AI, and it comes back with a number of ideas, things that I haven't even thought about. And I was like, "Well, what if we take this and so it has some interesting aspects to it, but I think our job as artists and educators is to figure out where where it makes the most sense for our students. How do we educate ourselves on it so we can then educate our students on it? And and I think there's such a reluctance on that we're not quite there yet. But I don't think anything is all good or all bad, but I think it's just finding out what those pieces are that we want to pull from it that makes the most sense for us. Because I don't see any college of fine arts embracing AI where it does everything, because I don't know a creative person in the world that wants to be a creative person and then never make another creative decision again because something is gonna do all the work for them. Like, that's not why That's not what creative people do. So I don't see it replacing what we do, and I think that's a fear.
I agree with you. That's a big fear of people that it will replace what we're doing, but using it as a tool, as you would a calculator, and what you put
Yeah,
in
yeah,
determines what you get out. And then I think we have to also teach our students what's happening because there's a lot of changes happening. And sometimes when I speak
yeah,
with students, they're not aware of all of the changes or tools that are out there with AI. And I think it's because that academia is
yeah,
not
yeah.
embracing it in many ways.
And it reminds me too of, 25 to 30 years ago when Adobe was launching, Photoshop and Illustrator, and it was PageMaker at the time. And there was a concern of, well, if Photoshop is around, students aren't going to learn how to draw anymore. What's going to happen to foundation drawing classes? And that was a big concern. And the computer is going to take over, and then there's going to be a no need at all for traditional arts. And that didn't happen. And over time, we learned what the role of Photoshop actually was, and it has advanced quite a bit, and it's an amazing tool. It's an absolutely amazing tool. And and so this reminds me a little bit of, this 25 to 30 year ago conversation when Photoshop really started to hit the scene pretty big. And so and that took time, right, to figure out what that tool meant and what it was used for and where it was used and how you introduce it in a curriculum. So I think we're facing that again, but it's much broader today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also feel it's important for us to teach our students to be critical consumers of information and knowledge and tools and provide critiques. And our younger generations are oftentimes really good at providing critiques, which is good and challenging.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because whether you like a new tool or not, you need to know enough about it to know why you wanna use it or why you're not using it and why you're against it. So that you're right, that critical dialogue about it has to happen so students and faculty and individuals can make the best decision for themselves to know what they wanna do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You have been able to maintain an artistic practice as an administrator. Would you talk a little bit about that and how you've approached that?
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, I always told myself I would never take a position if I couldn't make art anymore. And and it's not always easy, especially as I, advanced over the years and being a dean is my time is limited in the studio. But I knew that, right? I mean, I knew as I stepped into administrator that shift would have to take place. I don't I don't call it a sacrifice because I don't think I gave anything up. I chose this path. This I decided to go this route. So it's not like I think that helps too. If I'm not spending time in the studio, I don't feel as guilty because I know I made that choice with my career. But it's still important to me to get into the studio whenever I can. And so there are times where I just don't. There are so many things going on, so many events I have to be at and deadlines of things that have to take priority. But, if there are 3-day weekends, I try to make those almost residency like, where that's all I do from morning till night, just get in the studio. So I think what I've learned is that because I'm not in the studio as much, I'm uh, th it's it's much more intense when I'm in the studio because I don't know that I can get in the studio again tomorrow or even the next day. It might not be for 2 more weeks. So I feel like I'm more productive when I'm actually in the studio that because that time is that much more intense and precious. And so that has been a real benefit, I think, is learning how to use that time and making the most of that time. That's been pretty critical. And and I also think as an administrator, it's also not only is it important to me as a person and an artist to keep making work, but I think as an administrator, I can relate better to faculty and to students. I have to evaluate faculty every year. And if I wasn't making artwork and producing and exhibiting, how hypocritical would it be for me to tell another faculty member they're not producing enough, that their research and creative activity isn't enough if I'm doing absolutely nothing. So there's that hypocrisy that is part of it too, that I still want to be able to set that example that you can be doing all these other things and still be an active artist in your disciplines. So I feel like that helps me make that connection a little bit better.
Oh, I agree with you. When I was in an administrative position with oversight of a department, I felt the same way that I still needed to disseminate
Yeah.
scholarly work. If you're evaluating people and you're saying you need to be doing this,
Uh,
it just keeps you in
right.
touch. It just keeps you in touch with what people are going through. Just a reminder, like,
Exactly.
oh my gosh, it's hard to get a article published. It's hard to get something in a juried exhibition.
It exactly, exactly. Yeah, it keeps you connected to that. So you're understanding what where the faculty are, and and also to be able to still be relevant and talk to students, because they're entering that phase and being able to talk about it with students, because students always have questions about that. And if you're not doing it, you're missing out on that, on that piece of, you know, and so it also becomes embedded in that mentorship piece, whether it's faculty or students. And without that, that's a whole piece that you're missing.
Oh, such a great point. Such a great point. Oh my goodness.
And I just love getting in the studio too. And with that close connection of being a printmaker and administrator with that same process, I always wonder, and I don't want to find out the answer, but I always wonder if I stopped making artwork, would I be less engaged as an administrator? Would I be less creative as an administrator? Would I stagnate as an administrator? Because I see them so intrinsically, interwoven, that I'm afraid that if one of them stops, what happens to the other one, right?
Yeah.
You know?
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Because as an artist, you're constantly problem solving, and you're doing that as an administrator by encouraging that innovative thinking with faculty and students. As an artist, you're collaborating, maybe creating interdisciplinary projects, working with other artists, other individuals, and you're doing that as an administrator, getting those other perspectives on these projects. As an artist, you're a storyteller, but being an administrator, you have to be a storyteller, especially when you're working with donors and the community, so they understand why these things are important. So all of these things hit both sides.
They do. They do.
Yeah.
They really do. Oh, thank you for making that linkage between storytelling and being an administrator and an academia and an artist. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Would you tell us a story about one of your favorite? And I didn't ask this in the prep meeting, so if you want to, okay, Yolanda, interview done. You're off script. Some of our guests have felt that way sometimes, but it just made me think about what would you tell us a story about one of your favorite pieces of artwork that or print work that you've created in your career?
Mm. I'll probably go back to around 2010 when I was creating a series of artwork. And I created a whole series of artwork called Sensing Terrains. And I'm gonna bring up that particular series, not because I think it's the best artwork I've ever done, but it was truly collaborative work. I was a faculty member at the time, and I received a faculty fellowship. I was awarded the inaugural faculty fellow of the Institute for Micromanufacturing at Louisiana Tech University. that worked very closely with the College of Engineering and Science. And and I collaborated with physicists, with chemists, with mathematicians, and that collaboration led to that body of work that I could not have made if it wasn't if they weren't an integral part of that process. And that particular body of work, not only did it open my mind to other ideas and other viewpoints outside of the arts that really influenced me, but it really opened me up to other processes. That's where I really started to experiment with what happens if instead of etching this plate, I laser cut it? What if I'm using a CNC router to build this thing rather than hand carving it? Which all sounds pretty rudimentary, but it wasn't a way that I was used to working. And so not only getting these diverse ideas from chemists, scientists, and engineers to influence my work, but it also opened me up to other tools that were available, but I thought, well, that's not really for me. That's not what I do. And it has since become what I do. So again, like that wasn't the best artwork that I made, though I was excited about it at the time. But I think that experience of making that work, who I worked with, and how I made the work has stuck with me ever since. So that stands out to me as a pretty poignant moment in my career.
Oh, it sounds so impactful, and I love the collaboration. And then, yeah, it just sounds like it really helped you integrate different tools or methods or processes into your work.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, so I grew tremendously as an artist from that experience. And I think it's led to it somehow, seeped into my academic side as well, because after that, I was invited to speak at engineering and science conferences, how it relates to engineering, what is that connection, the STEM to STEAM, and what does that mean, and how can art be incorporated in how does art influence science and vice versa? And so, yeah, it was truly pivotal for me. And so it changed me as a person, as an artist, as an educator, all these things that we're aware of, but was never really at the forefront of my mind until then.
What a lovely testimony to the impact and outcomes of multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary work. Because sometimes as academics, we get into our own little silo, and this is such a great example.
Yeah, 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 and I don't know that I would be where I am today without that experience, artistically and academically, just because it was so eye-opening. And it was scary, right? Because I had no idea what to expect. I knew it was a really interesting and opportunity, and I thought, "Oh, I'm gonna apply for this because I like I like thinking about how math and science can influence art, and I like that idea." But it was kinda scary because I don't know what that means, and I don't know, but but that's part of the growth is being willing to take that risk. That's it's something that I think artists do on their own pretty regularly, but and to what extent, I think depends on the individual, but also thinking as a leader, how do you encourage risk taking and experimentation in academic pursuits, right? That mirrors what we do on the artistic side. And so I think anybody should be encouraged. Anybody in academia should be encouraged to be a risk taker and experiment because that's what leads to the things that, can be groundbreaking and really.
Absolutely. I agree that encouragement of taking risks and not penalizing people for taking risks is important.
Yeah, yeah. And support each other while we're trying new things, right? And when you take risks, things may not work out and that's okay, but then giving grace when that happens, and then how do you pivot to the next thing?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And you've documented your work so well, and one thing that we work on at Innovation
This
Insights is professional and personal branding and visibility. And I have a belief that academics do not do a good job. Academics and academia. I think there's a brand problem
Mhm.
there, and people are not sharing what they're doing. But you have a website that's beautiful that really documents your
Thank
academic
you.
profile. Could you talk a little bit about that and your decisions with that, and then also integrating social media into your work?
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes I think I've always been like anti-technology, because to be a real artist is to use the real traditional tools, and so I was always anti this and anti that for whatever reason, and didn't have a website for the longest time, and I feel like I was one of those people that might have been last to the party, to finally have a website. It took me a while to get there. And and one of my former institutions really encouraged that we as faculty, and they provided us support to build our websites. And so my website has gone through a number of iterations. And I don't know that in the early years I really utilized it, as much as I could or should have. But, with the advent of social media, which is something I never had access to as an emerging artist all those years ago, you know, it's it's a way to connect with other artists, with arts communities in ways that it's just impossible without it. You can't travel everywhere all the time to make these connections. And so it's it's a great way to show your process, shows your thinking, and it can lead to these other things. It's a great way to network without being at a conference or an exhibition to actually network. I don't see it being the only way. I would never want to take away the personal side of it, the in-person side of it. But it allows us to do so much broader work that we can't do in person, that showing the process, talking about the process, and as an academic, talking about that in a way that makes sense for what I do in my job. I feel like if you understand my artwork, you understand how I think and what kind of an administrator I am, just because they are really just two sides of the same coin. The outcome is different, but I'm doing the same thing. So if you understand this about me, then you understand that automatically. And so I feel like it shows both sides of who I am, which is they're so tightly wound together, because it's the same process. It's the same type of thinking. And I think that's really important in academia because there really isn't a platform to do that much otherwise. And I don't know that academics are good at that, at finding out the kinds of things they're interested in and the kinds of research that they're doing. And artists have a great platform to do it. So I think artists do it more so than, and I use the term artist broadly, artists in general do that better than most other disciplines, because so much, even if you're a musician, so much I think of what we do is still visual.
Right.
And, thinking of a stage too, that there's something very visual about a performance that that lends social media and websites to artists more so than any other discipline. So I think we as artists have, I don't wanna say figured it out, but are closer to really showcasing what we do much broader, global, what we do than other disciplines.
You're so right. You're so right. A spreadsheet or a buying plan or test results from a chemistry lab.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes they're not just as visual as
Exactly, exactly. And there might be ways, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think there are ways.
yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say publications are also very different too than exhibitions, and how do you showcase a publication, you know, in a way that's meaningful, right? And really conveys the essence of it.
Yeah, so true. So true. I've been cooking up ideas on ways to do that. So it's someday I will get that out to the world.
If anyone can do it, it's
Oh,
you.
I don't know.
I believe in you.
Thank you. Thank you. What advice would you give maybe a young academic as they're thinking about their personal brand and maybe a website and social media to help build their career?
Yeah, I really think it's so important to do that, is to, figure out who you are and what your work really means. Like, what does your work speak to or speak about? And just very simply and philosophically, like, what is it about that is the essence that can give you that brand? Because it's not always evident to young artists, who are trying these different things. There's always that common thread that will come through the work, even if the work might look different and if there's different media, but there is that common thread, that essence that goes through everything. And young artists aren't always aware of that. And so think about, if they can distill their work down to that essence, that then can become the brand of how they talk about their work, how they build that website, how they build that story on social media. That's going to be really important to get their name out there, because it's not like they have to find their place in this big art world. There's lots of art worlds within the world, and it's a matter of finding out which one you fit into. And that's a great way to do that. That's how you find your people, right? And that's where you wanna be. You wanna be with people, the ones who understand what you're doing and support what you're doing and are the ones that are cheering you on. That's how you find your people.
Yeah. I love it. Yes, and it's so important to find your people. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, artistically and professionally, you need to have that.
Yeah, you do. What's next for you as both a dean and an artist?
So, as an artist, I'm always trying to push my work to the next level. And so I'm still creating work. I'm still getting in my studio, and I'm trying to look at areas of the world where I haven't exhibited yet. Like, how can I break through? There are certain areas that I exhibit fairly regularly, and areas that I've never exhibited. So how do I do that? Where are the venues, and are those the right venues for what I do? So that's something that I'm looking to do. I have a fear of complacency. I guess that kind of explains a lot about how I make decisions or why I do things why I do. I have this fear of complacency that I don't want to say, well, I'm showing in all these places, so I should be fine with that. My work is getting out there. And I think there's a danger in that, where then your artwork starts to stagnate and you start to stagnate too, and your ideas start to. So I want to look at new venues, and where does my work fit into those venues? So that's something I wanna look next for my work artistically. As a dean, we are working on a 5-year strategic roadmap. I wanna see that through. My colleagues hear me say it all the time, the college we are today cannot be the college we are 5 years from now. We know we're relevant, but how do we show our relevance to everybody around us, especially in the environment that we're in? And so we're we've got big goals. We're trying to link ourselves to health sciences, because I think people don't realize that the arts are an important part of mental health, and just the positivity around that. And so we're working to collaborate and figure out initiatives and programming courses that maybe show how we are more than just an accessory, so to speak. That it's not a discipline that we do because it's fun to paint, or we like to dance, but it's truly embedded into our society, and people don't realize that. I mean, you know, I always go back and think about where we were in 2020. you know, and when we all had the same experience, right? We were all under lockdown for a period of time during COVID. And where did we go during that time, right? Well, we didn't go anywhere. But where did we think to turn to, right? And everybody turned to the arts, watching more films, reading more books, getting virtual tours of major museums around the world, listening to symphonies on Zoom as they were performing in their own apartments, you know? The world turned to the arts because that was the positive thing that brought people together, and so we want to that's what's next, I think, for our college, is to remind people of that, to remind people that we are embedded in every part of daily life, that life isn't really life without art in it, and reminding people of that and bringing that to the forefront, and so we're working to engage with these other disciplines to really showcase, not only what we do as a discipline, but how we bring a community together.
I love it. I absolutely love it. One thing that we are working on here at Innovation Insights is fighting stagnation. And your answer just really put you onto the team of stagnation fighters. So it's great.
Right. I'm here for it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. As we wrap up, I want to ask you the question that we ask every guest. How do you define innovation?
Y That's such a great question, it's such a hard one to answer, and maybe my answer is really simple, but I think of it as innovation is really the art of transforming boundaries into beginnings. So whether it's a canvas or a classroom or a college, right? Using the boundary as the starting point. Because if it's a starting point, again, you're gonna come up with ideas you would not have thought of if there wasn't that boundary. So that boundary, that obstacle is where you start, and then that's where those really big ideas come from.
Oh, I love that definition, and that's something that I've practiced with some of my design work over the years is setting a boundary and working within that to see how yeah, so that really cool, really cool. Oh, this has been delightful.
Oh, I've just thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom and insights, and I would love to have you back in the future because it's just gonna be fun to watch what you're doing at Wichita State University.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and I'd love to be back, and it's been a real pleasure and honor to be here with you today. So thank you for that opportunity.
Oh, well, thank you. To our guests, thank you for joining us today for our conversation with Dean Marie Bukowski, where we explored the intersections of leadership and artistry and her visionary work with her team and colleagues at the College of Fine Arts at Wichita State University. And being inspired by her dedication to maintaining an active creative practice too. So please connect with Marie through her website, mariebukowski.com, and follow her work. Also, we'll put all this information in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with your network. This helps support us to continue bringing these powerful conversations to the forefront. Thank you for tuning in. And always keep innovating, keep dreaming, and keep making a difference.